the past 2 weeks, we've explained Leibniz's principle of sufficient reason as a lead-in to show what a full Leibnizian cosmological argument would look like. Now, in his book Reasonable Faith, William Lane Craig breaks down the full Leibnizian argument like this. Number 1. Anything that exists has an explanation of its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in an external cause. Number 2. If the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation is God. Number 3. The universe exists. Number 4. Therefore, the universe has an explanation of its existence. You can see where we can derive this by combining number 1 and number 3. Finally, number 5, even further, we can also conclude that therefore, the explanation of the existence of the universe is God. We get this by combining number 2 with number 4. Going way back to our discussion of valid and sound arguments, all the way back in episode 7, you should be able to see that this argument is valid, meaning that if its premises are true, then its conclusions also must be true. So the only relevant question then is, are the premises true? Well, premise 1 is just the principle of sufficient reason that we've covered for the past 2 weeks. I've already given several reasons to accept that. Today, though, I want to respond to an objection to this premise that was launched by Crispin Wright and Bob Hale in an article they wrote for the Journal of Philosophy. You see, they argued that the explanation for any physical thing must lie in a state that existed prior to that thing and in which that thing did not yet exist. The explanation for a baby, for example, is the procreation of the parents, at which time obviously the baby didn't exist yet. Wright and Hale claim that this shows that it's absurd to seek an explanation for the universe. The universe, allegedly, is all there is. Without it, there's nothing but emptiness. Well, emptiness can't explain anything, which shows why it makes no sense to look for an explanation for the universe. Now, if the universe doesn't need an explanation, then premise 1 falls apart, as does the conclusion pointing to God. So what's wrong with their argument? In short, it commits a classic logical fallacy called question begging. Now, begging the question occurs when an argument's premises assume its conclusion. It's not always obvious because it's an assumption and therefore it's not explicitly stated, but if you look closely, you can find it. In this case, Wright and Hale's entire argument hinges on one assumption, and it is a doozy. They assume that the universe is all there is. I mean, sure, if they're right about that, then without the universe we're left with nothing, and nothing can't explain anything. But notice something here. They're assuming atheism. If God exists, then the universe is not all there is. There is something else that could explain the universe, namely God. You see, they've smuggled their ultimate conclusion into their argument by way of a hidden assumption. It's simply not necessarily true that without the universe we're left with nothing but emptiness. That's the ultimate question that's up for debate. So in the end, Leibniz's principle of sufficient reason appears solid. Next week we'll move on to premise 2. If the universe has an explanation of its existence, that explanation is God. See you then. God bless.